Thank you very much. Very excited to be here. Awesome audience. Thank you, Santa, for organizing this. My name is David Blinov, and I'm a partner at the F Company. So what's the F Company? We're a digital agency, and we're based here in Helsinki and then in Amsterdam as well. And we're trying to do something a little bit different as a company. We're helping businesses find new ways to grow. And before we get to the case study, which I'm sure you're very excited to hear, I want to talk a little bit about why it's so critical, why it's so important to find those new ways to grow, and why it's so hard for businesses to do so these days. So we have a beautiful audience here. There are a lot of people here, experienced people. You've done B2B marketing for a while, so I'm sure you can agree that it can be a pretty frustrating experience. Because as a B2B marketer, you have to wear a lot of hats. There are so many things you need to do. But at the same time, your main target remains generating leads for the business. Because if the company doesn't grow, all of your other marketing activities kind of become secondary, right? And there are things that prevent you from reaching that goal successfully. And some of those reasons are objective. The cost per lead can get quite high. The sales cycles are becoming longer and longer, so sometimes it takes you 1 or 2 years to see the results of your marketing campaigns to tell if it was successful or not. And don't even get me started on how complex the customer journeys can become. I'm sure you've all seen this recent research from Gartner that shows just how many interaction points there can be before a B2B buying decision can be made. And we're marketers. What we want to do is we want to reach people at the right time with the right message. But honestly, looking at this is becoming really, really complicated. But the good news is all of this stuff is objective. You can't really change it. You just have to get used to it and accept it. But what you can change is your own digital marketing. And the crazy thing is that digital is evolving and growing so quickly that the things you used to do a year ago or 2 years ago don't necessarily work anymore. So it's a challenge for many companies to figure out sort of what's the right approach and what's the right thing to do. And the reason it's so difficult is quite simple, really. Imagine the situation: you come to work on a Monday morning, and you get your marketing team in place, and you start planning your marketing strategy for the next year. And you're really excited, bring it on 2019. You're finally going to turn things around. You're going to start using those new tools and new strategies and methods that you hear people talking about. Maybe you're even going to take that giant leap and introduce, I don't know, machine learning to your marketing campaigns, which is a good idea, by the way. But then what happens? What happens is those brilliant ideas smash into the reality of your marketing processes. So the question then becomes, when you have so many options and so many possible strategies to work with, where do you start? What do you do? What do you focus on? How do you choose between the thousands and thousands of those marketing tools that are out there today? It's just absolutely insane. And every year, this is getting larger and larger. And how do you take your very complex B2B organization with its many moving parts and so many decision makers and processes where things take forever to decide or implement? And how do you choose that right strategy for your company to focus on? And it's a very difficult question for many companies. For most of our clients, it's a massively complicated thing to figure out. And then you're sitting in that meeting with your team, and it's a long meeting. It's probably going to take hours, and ideas will be thrown around, and you're going to have a nice little brainstorming session with some post-it notes. And then eventually someone's going to say, you know what? Our marketing should probably become more agile, because that's probably the best way for us to figure out what's the right strategy to go for. And honestly, yes, it's a good direction to start thinking in. And apart from the fact that agile marketing is kind of a swear word in the community, if you know what I mean, because everyone and their grandma are claiming to be doing agile marketing. But here's the thing. For most companies, agile marketing simply means taking your 6-month marketing project and slicing it into sprints, which is a nice thing to do. But honestly, if your sales are falling down, if your marketing campaigns are not performing, and if you don't know what's the right strategy to choose for your business, dividing your projects into 2-week sprints is not going to help you. Although it's a nice thing to do, but it's not going to solve your problems. And the problem here is that companies need to move away from this mentality of having one approach that works for a while, and then when it stops working, and you just sit there and you try to figure out what is it that we should do, and you spend time and money trying to invent a new magical strategy that's supposed to fix the problems that you have in your business. But that's the old school approach, that's the reactionary approach. What we believe companies need to do to stay successful in B2B marketing is to embrace a process where you constantly keep coming up with hypotheses, testing them, and then killing what doesn't work and keeping what works. And today I'm going to show you a case study where we implemented this experiment-based process for a B2B company, and we managed to get fantastic results in a very short period of time. Now, meet Praecom. Praecom is one of the leading Finnish video conferencing companies. They come to your business and they make sure that everything from your meeting rooms to your technology and to customer support is running very smoothly, and all of your meetings are 100% successful. Now, they've been in the market for over 10 years, and they work with some of the largest companies in Finland. But the last couple of years, their sales started falling down. Especially the last 3 years or so, it really sort of flatlined. And they started thinking, why is it so that our marketing, digital marketing, used to work so well, but the campaigns no longer work? What are we doing wrong? Why is it so that our salespeople have to work so hard to even maintain that level of sales that we used to get? And they're very smart people, very hardworking, so they figured they should do something to their digital marketing to change that. So they put together a team, they put together a budget, and they started investing into some of the trendier things to do these days, which is implementing marketing automation, investing in some influencer campaigns, producing some beautiful videos. All of them are very nice, smart things to do, but none of that actually moved the needle for them. And they started asking, so why is it so that we're pushing all of that money into marketing, but we're not getting the results that we want to get? And I think that's a question that a lot of people, also in this audience, can relate to. It's a very common problem that people have. So they decided to focus on what they do best, which is meetings, and then find a partner to help them understand where the problem is. And that's where we come in. So we agreed on a pilot project where our goals would be to identify the source of the problem and then help them get back on track and find a scalable solution. And to make it more interesting for everybody, we put a time limit on the project. So we only had 5 months to do what they tried and failed to do in the previous 5 years. So how do you approach a project like that? We realized that what we need to do is find a way to test and learn as quickly as we can if we want to find a working solution in a short period of time. So we built a process for them. We built an experiment-based process. Now the process had 7 or 8 steps, and because we have a limited amount of time, I'm looking at Santa, he's looking at me, I summarized it for you in sort of very big picture steps here. We start from deep understanding of the problem. We go to experimentation and sort of this looped process over there where you design solutions and then you test them, and based on the data you learn and you optimize, and then you proceed to scale what works and what doesn't. So I will take you step by step through these three major points there and show you the kind of thinking that we had behind the campaigns and the kind of results that we got in the end. So starting with deep understanding. The reason it's so important is because whenever we come to our clients and we say, what is the problem in your marketing? Most of the time what they tell you are the symptoms of the problem, but not the problem itself. So when a client tells us that, you know what, we're not getting enough leads, or the conversion rates are not good enough, your standard approach would be to go and start fixing those things. And the way you would do that, for example, is by going and optimizing your landing pages. You know, if your conversion rates are not good, what are you going to do? You're going to do that. And sometimes that could be a good idea, but most of the time, what you would be doing is actually focusing on the symptoms and not on treating the disease itself. So in this particular example, if the conversion rates are bad and the leads are not enough, then one potential or 2 potential problems for that would be a poor understanding of the customer journeys, for example. It could be that your landing pages are actually amazing and perfectly optimized, but if you're sending people there at the wrong time then they simply don't have the motivation to take the action you want them to take. But if you had only understood where they are at the customer journey stage, which stage of the customer journey they're in, and if you had introduced a couple of interaction points beforehand, then by coming to the same page later on, they would be much more motivated and you would get 2-3 times better conversion rates. Without optimizing the landing page, without touching that symptom and focusing on the problem. Another option would be the lack of marketing attribution between tools and channels. So if a company doesn't understand what is the impact that each channel has on the lead generation and the sales, then you're just going to be stuck once again fixing the symptoms and not the problem. Whereas if you went ahead and you set up a marketing technology stack that would allow you to get complete view over your marketing attribution, and you would notice that the channel that you're actually ignoring almost completely is responsible for most of your sales, and it's converting better than everything else, then perhaps you can go ahead, you can switch up your media budgets, and you would get much better conversion rates simply because you would be focusing on the channels that actually matter. So this is why it's so important to get a very deep understanding of what the problems actually are. So when we came to Praecom, we did a lot of data analytics. We looked at all of their past campaigns. Santu is hurrying me up. We looked at a lot of their past campaigns, and we talked to the sales and marketing team to understand what is really going on. And once we thought we had an idea of what the problem is, we created a set of hypotheses, the ways we thought we could solve that problem. And we created as many as 20 or 25 different hypotheses. And I'm going to show you just a few of them to give you an idea of the kind of thinking that we had. So for example, talking about buyer personas, very important topic, I think. With the existing buyer persona that they had, and they only had one to start with, survive validation with marketing data. Because who are we to say that the buyer persona they targeted 3 years ago is still the same buyer persona that they should be going for today? Because we know how quickly things change. So what if we tested it? And what if we learned that by changing it, even by a little bit, we could get much better results? And then another point, what if we could introduce a secondary buyer persona and make a difference to the customer journey? So what if we found some other people in their potential client organizations who would have an impact on the buying decision? Because if this is true, and we could target those people, they would potentially multiply our available market size. Now, could the customer journeys be made more personalized by gathering all the marketing data in one place? Because if we do that, and we make the communications more meaningful and more personal, we could potentially move people down the customer journey faster and better. Now, talking about digital channels, Praecom has tried a lot of different channels in the past, but we know how quickly digital marketing is evolving. So what if we could find something where we could reach those people, those potential leads, potential customers, cheaper and in a more meaningful way than before? And then, how do we know that the messaging that used to work 3 or 5 years ago is still the best thing to say to our customers? Who are we to assume that in those 2 or 3 years, the buyer persona's goals, wishes, and motivations stayed the same as they are now? So what if we tried completely new approaches to messaging and found that they work much better? So what we did is we took about 20 different hypotheses and we tested them in an experiment-driven way where we would collect data and optimize as we go along. And some of these campaigns started with digital ads. So instead of launching 3 or 5 ad campaigns like you would normally do, we started with 120 campaigns and 15 different landing pages. And the reason we needed so many at the same time is because we wanted to learn as quickly as possible about who our best buyers are and what's the best way to reach them. And we used automated tools to automatically switch off the campaigns that were not performing, so that after a few weeks, we were only left with about 10 different ad campaigns out of the original 120. And those were delivering the best possible message to our best possible audience. Oops, that's the wrong one. Then, there we go. At the same time, we're also able to test multiple channels, engagement channels for Praecom, and we learned that some of them performed way better than the others. And we also tested things like a secondary buyer persona, like you heard from the hypothesis slide. And we learned that the secondary buyer persona actually performs really well. So we collected enough data and we were able to tell that, you know what, by introducing the secondary buyer persona, we're able to expand the size of our market very significantly. And so this is the way how we sort of proceeded with those experiments and testing those hypotheses. And we were turning off what didn't work, and we focused on the things that worked really well. And the interesting thing was that we learned about 1,000 things that don't actually work for Praecom. But at the same time, we learned a handful of things that worked really, really well. So as we were going along, what we could notice is that the cost per lead was going down very significantly compared to the baseline especially. And the number of leads was going up. So this is something that you want to see across all of your campaigns. This is a very good sign. And the results were fantastic. If it opens, it's going to be fantastic. We got a 13 times increase on the number of leads that they used to have before. The engagement rate was fantastic as well, and the increase in sales-ready leads was comparable to the overall increase in leads, so also about 10 to 13x. And those leads, we learned a lot about them in the process. We collected a lot of data, and that data was used to optimize the nurture funnels as well. So every single lead was put into a personalized nurture funnel, and then at the end of that funnel, they would become sales-ready leads delivered to Praecom. Now, the results were so good that we actually agreed on a 1-year project with them where we would use the data that we collected here to optimize their marketing from the ground up. And of course, we got some fantastic quotes that I can put on the screen, and they make me look very smart. But the important thing is not the leads that we got, not the improvement in business and sales that we got them, but the important thing is that we would have never been able to accomplish that without this process. And the reason I'm saying that is because the hypotheses that we came up with, when we made those hypotheses, we assumed that some of them would work way better than the others. But when we tested them through this experimentation cycle, it turned out that the ones that we would bet all of our money on, they actually failed miserably. So the point is that if we hadn't created this experiment-based process, and we simply did the thing that companies normally do, which is throwing all of your money and time and effort into a campaign and see if it sticks, we would have most likely failed at this project. But because of this, we're able to experiment and find the things that actually work and things that can be scaled. So if you only learn one thing from this, it's that it's time to rethink the way you do B2B marketing. And tomorrow when you get to work and you start thinking about your strategy for the future, think about how you can create this process that would allow you to identify growth problems and then quickly create and test those different hypotheses to find a solution that works for your business. Because that's how you make an impact, and that's how you stay competitive in B2B marketing today. Thanks a lot, guys. There's a case study on our website, thefcompany.com, if you want to download it. And please come and talk to me, come say hi. I would love to hear about your marketing goals. Thank you.